Welcome to Secrets of the Elite. I am Lindsey Williams, your host. I have waited for 35 years to make this DVD presentation. The people who have been friends to me over the years and have given me information, whom I refer to as the elite, are now retired in their 70s and 80s. I have withheld this information for these years out of respect for these people who have been willing to risk oftentimes their position or their retirement in order to be able to tell me things. Let me say, if I may, emphatically, there positively is a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world. Nothing ever happens in Washington by chance. Nothing takes place in the financial world by happen so. Men behind closed doors have decided everything that's going to happen, and my lifestyle and yours oftentimes is controlled by these people, by what they do. These elite of the world know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. There's no question in their minds. Well, let me begin back where it began with me. I had been the pastor of a church for 12 years. I went to Alaska, and after arriving there, I found they were building the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. I went to Alaska Pipeline Service Company and I said, "Don't you need a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline?" Well, they said, "We don't know what to do with you." Well, finally, they did and gave me the Prudhoe Bay area, and from there down to Galbraith Lake, 7 work camps. And they just said, "Go and see what you can do." I did. And a few months later, Mr. R.H. King, personnel relations man with Alaska, came to me and he said, "Chaplain, you're saving us thousands of dollars of counseling fees we aren't having to pay. Your religious denomination is paying your salary. We would like to offer you executive status." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Go any place you'd like, see anything you'd like to see, and when you happen to be at Prudhoe Bay on the weekends, you're welcome to stay at Arco Base if you wish in executive dorms." And he said, "We would like to invite you to sit in our board meetings in an advisory capacity in order to help the relationship between management and labor." I had not the slightest idea what I was getting into. For 3 years' time, I sat with, lived in the same dorms with, was across the dinner table from, rode in the vehicles with, and day after day were in the presence of people that the average person never gets to meet. People who control the world. They literally do. If someone had asked me before I went to the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, "Chaplain, do you believe there's a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world?" I would have laughed at them. And I would have said, "Who are you, a John Bircher?" If someone had asked me that question 3 years later, after I had lived with these people, "Do you believe there's a group of people who tell the president what to do, dictate to Congress what bills to pass, tell OPEC on any given day what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil?" I would have said, "Not only do I believe it, I sat and listened to them talk about it." So now you can understand why I can so emphatically make the statement, there positively is a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world. I remember one morning I walked into Arco Base and Mr. Ken Fromm was sitting there. And he greeted me and said, "Chaplain, come on over. I'd like to introduce you to someone." I walked over to the breakfast table and he said, "Chaplain, this is Mr. So-and-so." And he called him by name and said, "He's the International Secretary-Treasurer of Exxon Corporation." I tried my best over those 3 years' time to try to comprehend these people, their mindset. Now, keep in mind, I had been a pastor for all those years, had had many opportunities of counseling with every type of a situation imaginable, had graduated with a bachelor's degree, so I had some idea of how to work with people from my schooling years. And now I had the opportunity to understand people that the average person never comes in contact with. I tried to figure out how they think, what their lifestyles are. And I honestly believe, as I look back over those years now, that the reason I was there was the providence of God. There is no way that a little insignificant unknown missionary flying airplanes out in the bush of Alaska could have ever lived with the elite for 3 years' time, except by the providence of God. And there is no way that I could possibly be here today on this DVD trying to explain to you the things that you need to know in order to be able to overcome the new world order, except by the providence of God. I think you're viewing this DVD by God's providence. And the things that I say, I hope will be a great help to you in your life so that you can keep food on your dinner table, can overcome the elite and the New World Order. And you can, if you understand their mindset, but only if you understand the thought patterns, the mindset of these people. I have written numerous books. In fact, I've written 6 books. My first book was The Energy 9 Crisis. And I wrote it for the purpose of helping you understand how these people think and how they live and how to comprehend them. There was a second book entitled To Seduce a Nation. And all of these books are written for the purpose of helping you understand the elite of the world. Now, these books were out of print as of about 2 years ago. And then so many people said, "Chaplain, please, you must help us. We're facing a whole different world, of a new world order today. We need to understand the thought patterns and the mindset of these people." So I did. We have it, and you can get it. And even though it went out of print a few years ago, you can go to Amazon Kindle, and you can download the book, The Energy 9 Crisis, and To Seduce a Nation. Go to Amazon Kindle, and you can have those books. And I hope that you will read some chapters there that I'll be relating to on today. I look back over these years, and from 1980, my book, The Energy 9 Crisis, the book was published in 1980. Some very unusual things happened. After I wrote the manuscript for The Energy 9 Crisis, I didn't know what to do with the book. I had never taken journalism in high school or college. I had not the slightest idea how to get a book published and to distribute it. And so I thought, well, I'll give it to publishers. Well, I sent the manuscript to every leading publishing house in America and said, "Would you publish my book? And here's the manuscript." Every publishing house, everyone wrote back and said, "Chaplain, it's too hot. You'll get sued. We can't handle it." Now, today that would not be true. My book, Energy 9 Crisis, was not controversial at all today. Would not be compared to what it was 35 years ago. But in 1980, then I said, okay, what do I do with it? And I'll never forget, I was in Denver, Colorado, Beth Eden Baptist Church, and a pastor, a wonderful, godly gentleman, said to me, "Chaplain, you must publish that manuscript." He said, "The world has got to know what you have lived and your experiences." He said, "Okay, I'll help you." Dr. Earl Madison, never forget him. He's gone home to be with the Lord now. And he said, "Chaplain, I'll help you put out the first 500 books." Well, we did. I never thought they would sell. They were gone in days. Then we published 5,000 books. They were gone in a few weeks. Then we published 10,000 books. They were gone in a few months. Within a year or so, it became a bestseller. People were hungry for the truth. They wanted to know what really is going on out there. And the book told them. At that point, I began getting invitations from speaking engagements all across the country. I mean, day after day. And finally, the mission board that I happened to be with at the time said, "Chaplain, you can't publish a secular book and still be a missionary in Alaska." I said, "No problem, I'll gladly resign." After all, there was a whole world out there to tell about what was going on and to tell about Jesus Christ. So I chose that, left Alaska, and began traveling. I have spoken in every state in America with the exception of Maine. I wish somebody would invite me to Maine for a speaking engagement. I'd take it just to be able to say that I've been to all 50 states, had the opportunity to travel to Australia, New Zealand, many countries of the world. People are hungry for the truth. And for a person who lived that story, someone said to me the other day, well, Chaplain, don't you have any trouble giving a presentation like I'm giving right now, for instance, on this DVD? And I said, no. The difference in this presentation and the presentation that just a speaker would give at a convention would be he looked in books, he read newspapers, he got current events, and he put together a presentation. What you're hearing today is what I lived. I was there. I saw them. I heard them. I ate across the dinner table from them. I lived in the dorms with them. The most asked question over the past 35 years, any radio talk show I've been on, television show, speaking engagement, public, is, Chaplain, please tell us something about the elite. Well, I will. And this is where I began. First of all, a few years ago, someone said, where do the elite live? Well, you need to know this, because if you're going to prepare for the New World Order, you need to know how the elite have prepared. So I called one of my elitist friends and I said, where's Mr. So-and-so? You know, I knew him years ago, but I didn't know where he is now. And he told me. And then I said, well, where is this gentleman? And then I said, where's that gentleman? And I called a number of the people that I had their phone numbers, whom I call the elite, the super wealthy, the people who behind closed doors determine your life before you ever know what's going to happen to you. And I said, I'd like to know, where do you live? You know what I found out? Not a single elitist, whom I would call the super wealthy, the people who are in the controlling powers of the world, not a single one of them have their primary residence in a metropolitan area. Isn't that amazing? They know something. And I hope you're getting the information now also. They all, oh yeah, they may have their penthouses in New York and Washington, but their primary residence, every one of them live in a rural area. But my next statement is going to surprise you. The elitists are not survivalists. Now you say, but Chaplain, if the elite know what's going to happen, they understand what tomorrow is going to bring, and it could be catastrophic events, then why haven't they made preparations for survival? Oh, you see, since they know what's going to happen tomorrow, they know tomorrow how to do what's necessary to do, where if you wait until after the currency has already collapsed, or you wait until after someone has bombed a few more, like they did in, or I should have say, flown airplanes as they did in 9/11. You see, you wait until after the fact because you don't know in advance what's going to happen. The elite know ahead of time exactly what's going to take place, and therefore they don't have to do what you and I have to do in the way of making preparations for these things. Have you ever wondered why so many of the elitists, and I'll name two at this point, by the way, have you ever wondered why they live to a ripe old age? One of the elite would be George Herbert Bush, Daddy Bush. And another one, if I could name them, would be Mr. Henry Kissinger. They're in their 80s, still healthy. Why do these men live to be at such an age? They know some things you don't know. But some things I'm going to tell you today, you will need to view all of these DVDs, because some things may be more important to you toward the end than they are now. As a result, I have chosen 4 people to help me with this presentation. I knew that it would take some professionals in different fields in order to do it. The Lord led us to one gentleman by the name of Tom Fowler. He's a Wall Street insider. He could walk out the front door of his office on any given day when he was on Wall Street and look up at the Twin Towers before they were destroyed. Some of the things that Mr. Fowler is going to say to you, you'll find them fascinating. You'll have to concentrate. I mean, he gives an approach such as I'm giving, except he dealt with the insiders from one source. I dealt with them from another standpoint. Then I chose Pastor David Bowen. He was a Hollywood playwright at one time. And as you know, Hollywood is their perversion, and the national liberal media is their mouthpiece. You've probably heard me say that on radio shows. And he dealt with them from that standpoint. You're going to find what he has to say very fascinating. Mark Johnson, he's going to deal with a subject that I have never heard a definition of that I was satisfied with. You must hear about derivatives. Derivatives could, at any point that they wish to pull the plug, bring the entire financial system, both Europe, America, the Middle East, I care not what part of the world it is, the Orient, it could bring the entire world to a collapse tomorrow morning if and when they're ready for it to. Maybe some have never even heard of the derivatives, but you're going to hear them now. Then Rodney Balance. You've seen him before with me in a DVD series. You will hear what he has to say. In 1980, when my book, The Energy Non-Crisis, came out, and I say this very modestly, and I say it to God's glory, not to mine, because here I was, just a little lowly missionary flying airplanes out in the bush of Alaska. I became famous overnight. I'm not a person that enjoys the limelight, but I gained renown that took place very rapidly. I at times from 1980 to about 1985, I would do 2 and 3 radio shows per day. People were hungry to know about the energy crisis and how much crude oil we have. I averaged crisscrossing America from East Coast to West Coast on the average of every other week by aircraft, commercial. I was speaking day after day in cities all across this land. We were having marvelous audiences. It wasn't unusual back in those days. Can't do it today, of course. The internet, people, that's about the thing they pay most of the attention to. But back in those days, they would come out to a rally. And it wasn't unusual to get 300, 500 people in small towns, in big cities, wherever it may be. We had as many as 10,000 people. The largest rally we ever had was in the Salt Dome in Salt Lake City. And because of this renown, there were some people who were watching me, and I didn't know they were there. You never know who's in your audiences. And a group came to me one day, and they said, "Chaplain, we would like you to help us." I didn't have the slightest idea. I knew they looked like businessmen. They were well-dressed. They were well-spoken. And they said, and you need to understand this expression, I think, that they used back in those days, "Chaplain, we would like you to help us get some people out to our seminars." And I said, "Well, what kind of seminars are you speaking of?" Now, keep in mind, they'd been in my audiences. They were seeing the number of people that were there. And they said, "Will you come in contact with a lot of people?" They said, "We have teaching seminars on the lifestyle and the methods of the elite." Well, I said, "That's interesting." I lived with them for 3 years. And I have the personal phone numbers of a few of them. I wonder if what you're seeing or what you are saying and what I saw are the same. They said, "Well, here's what we'd like to do. Whenever you find people in your seminars that you think might be interested in being trained in the secrets of the elite, would you be willing to introduce them to us? I said, well, first of all, I have to find out what you're teaching. So they said, okay, we will buy your airline ticket. We'll pay all of your expenses to our resort in the Bahamas, and we'd like you to come out and see. I was amazed. I did. I took them up on the offer. I've never been afraid to go places and meet people. And so I did. Beautiful. Private beach. Oh, you've never seen such facilities, such food. And I stayed there for a week. And I heard some of the most renowned speakers that you could possibly imagine explaining the insides, the inner workings of the social elite, how they do what they do. I have never told this story before, and I must admit to you that I haven't told it because, not of fear, but out of respect for my elitist friends who are now retired in their 70s and 80s, and I felt that I should only wait until these men had gotten to the place that they could say what one said to me recently. As many of you know, one of my elitist friends passed away a year ago. Some of you have heard me give his name on radio shows. And before he died, he basically said to me, he said, Chaplain, I'm too old to care. Just go ahead and tell the world everything. Well, at that point, I decided I would. And I have told some things. But there are many things I have never told until today that you've never heard until this DVD series. And the things that I saw these people teaching in these seminars at this fabulously beautiful resort in the Bahamas was exactly what I had heard the elite talking about. The very things that they said they would do. You see, they make the laws. There's not a single bill that goes before Congress that is not written by the elite. They know what the bill is going to be before it ever gets there. The congressmen don't. Very seldom does a congressman ever read an entire bill. Practically never does a president of the United States of America ever read a bill that goes before Congress, and he signs it. And the congressmen sign it. Who wrote it? I know who wrote it. I heard them talking about these things when they were talking about what the elite do and how they act. And I was fascinated. And so I told these people, I said, yes, I'll be glad to do that for you. I said, I know some people that need to understand the inner workings of the elite, and I wanted to know myself. And so they said, okay, if you'll be willing to recommend people of class and quality that you think could understand these things and it will be helpful to them, we'll be glad to pay all expenses for you every other month to come out and be with us at our seminar in the fabulously beautiful Bahamas. And I did. For about 2 years, every other month, I spent a week at their resort. I remember one day, the airline strip, or the aircraft strip that was right close to the resort, I happened to have gotten off the plane that I had flown out in commercially, and not many airplanes landed on a strip like that. It was very private. And all of a sudden, a 727 Boeing aircraft flew in, large jet. And I waited to see who was getting out. And the gentleman who was sponsoring the seminar that week happened to be standing beside me. And he said, do you know who those men are? Two of them. Here, this big 727 jet now, like you fly on when you fly the commercial airliners. And the side door hydraulically went down, and he said, Owens Corning, one of the large corporations of America. And two of their executives got out of the aircraft. You see, the secrets of the elite are known by every congressman. The secrets of the elite are known by federal judges. The secrets of the elite are known by a few lawyers, but you don't know them. They don't want you to know them. They train their young elites as to their thought patterns and their mindset and how they should do things. And as soon as a person arrives in Washington, in Congress, I'm going to tell you some of the things they're taught. And you're going to find some very surprising things in the course of all of this. Every president of the United States of America is briefed on these things. And very soon they realize where they stand. I'll give you a statement. You can find this one on the internet for yourself. This statement was made by Lloyd Blankfein. He is the boss at Goldman Sachs. And this the statement was made to the Sunday Times of London, England. And he said, "Bankers do God's work." Did you catch that? This man said to the London Times, Sunday Times, bankers do God's work. These people think that they have a right to do what they're doing. They are fully convinced that you and I are dumb, stupid, don't understand what they're doing, and most people don't. And that's one of the reasons I'm producing this DVD series, because I don't want you to be ignorant of what the elite are doing. I want you to be knowledgeable of what's happening. And the only way that you will overcome the New World Order is to be knowledgeable as to how they carry on everything that they do. You might call this a mini college education in some fashions. It was 1976. We had finished the service at Arco Base that night, and the men moved out of the way, and for some reason, the senior executive on duty that week had attended the service and was sitting with us, I'll never forget, in the movie hall of all places at Arco Base. And we just sat there and talked a few minutes. I guess he wasn't too busy that evening. And in the course of the conversation, he said something. He said, AT&T is going to be declared a monopoly. And wait a minute. Now, think back, folks. 1976, there was only one telephone company in America. It was American Telephone and Telegraph. If you wanted a phone, if you wanted communications, if you wanted long distance, you went to AT&T. There was no other. Now, how did he know it was going to be declared a monopoly? It had already been decided behind closed doors. He already knew that Congress would do exactly what they wanted and would declare it a monopoly. Not only that, but they had a reason. The elite wanted to declare AT&T a monopoly. After all, AT&T had been in existence as long as Ma Bell had been around, and they didn't need the elite's money anymore. They were well financed. They weren't borrowing. And the elite don't make money when companies don't have to borrow money from them. They declared, and you'll find this in my book, The Energy Non-Crisis, by the way. Please go to Amazon Kindle and get the book. You'll see it for yourself. It was recorded in 1980 when I wrote the book. Before AT&T was ever declared a monopoly, they knew it, knew what was going to happen. And why did they do it? Because when AT&T was declared a monopoly, that meant that other companies, Sprint, Horizon, all these companies would spring up in their place. And how does a new company start? They borrow money from the elite. So they wanted AT&T declared a monopoly so the elite could turn around and lend money to all of these new companies that would get going because AT&T didn't need them anymore. This is just an idea of how the elite bring about their control factor. 1983, I heard when I was at the meetings in the Bahamas, I heard them talking about something that you didn't hear until just the last year or two. Free trade outsourcing. Those seminars in the Bahamas that I was attending, already back in those days, they were training the young elite to take the industry from America to China and India and Mexico, moving it out of this country, taking away your jobs. And already in those days, I was hearing them talking about free trade outsourcing before you ever knew what the business was all about. Why did they want to do this? There's a reason. Oh, I hope this will anger you to no end. The elite knew that they had to take their industry abroad. Why? Well, you just heard from the Wall Street Insider. You're going to hear about other facets of how Congress makes money. It all boils down to this. Let's move our factory to China. Now, we'll make our fortune there in China. Then what do we do with that? If we bring it back into America, it falls under the rules of, well, you know the story. So they don't do it. Where do they take that? This was one of the things that was so fascinating in these seminars that I attended. Where do the elite take their money? Well, they moved industry abroad intentionally. Oh, I know, they could produce it cheaper in China than they can in America, but what's the real reason behind it all? It's, again, a matter of control of the funds that they were making out there. And where do they put it? Now, if you are super wealthy, you take your money to Liechtenstein. You probably never heard that name. If you are a little bit less than super wealthy, you take your money to the Isle of Man. And all this was taught in these seminars, where you take your money according to how many millions or billions that you might have. If you are a little less down the line than Liechtenstein and the Isle of Man, you take it to Belize and you hide it away. And then if you are in the $100,000 range up to $1 million range, you go to the Turks Islands, or well, then you could go to the Cayman Islands if you're 100 to 200,000 or maybe $1 million. And it all was determined by how wealthy you were as to where you hid your money outside of the United States of America. And industry knew if they moved their plants abroad, that their super wealthy could become super wealthier by making their wealth there. And the young elite were being taught this way back in those days. You ask about the lifestyle of the young elite or the elite themselves. They're human. I know, they think they're God, but they're really only human. And as a result, you can see why the government officials and others fall for the things that the elite are telling them. The Federal Reserve was produced for the sake of the elite. The World Bank and the IMF manage money according to the way that the elite want them to. And of course, you know who the two biggest elitists in the country are. How do they dress? Well, we'll get down to the nitty-gritty of the elite. Not shabby. I don't think I ever saw an elite dressed just haphazardly. I would use one expression if I could, and you and I need to know this expression also. Look the part. Whatever you want to be, look that part. In fact, my family, my wife, my son, and I, when we travel on aircraft, we always dress in a suit with a shirt and tie. We dress, why? We've never failed to get good service. Dress the part. Look the part. Whatever you want to be, look that way. The elite, that's exactly the way they look, the way they act, very professional. I never saw one drunk. I very seldom ever saw one smoke a cigarette. There are some things about the elite that you'll find very interesting, and I hope these simple things about the elite will help you. I learned them as they taught them to me, and I think they can be of help to you. Let me begin with what I saw in those seminars out in the Bahamas and what I heard. The younger elite are chosen. Mr. Clinton was chosen very early in life. People that you see in Washington and hear their names right now, these people are chosen from their college years and younger, and they are taught in these seminars and classes how to enslave the masses. I hope you caught that word. You heard me correctly. They are taught how to enslave the masses. Let me try to explain. I learned many things about the elite. And one of the first things I learned was to listen to their buzzwords. Probably the next most important thing, and by the way, let me pause here long enough to say, any movie that comes out of Hollywood, any liberal news media, any program that I might watch on any given afternoon, I can pick out buzzwords. I have tuned my mind and my ear over 35 years to listening to what these people have to say. And things that the average person would probably never pick up on, immediately they stand out in my mind. The elite, the second thing I learned, most important thing about the elite, they have a code of ethics. Now I know this sounds strange, and especially when it's coming from a man who's been a minister of the gospel for 55 years. But the elite do have a code of ethics. Now, their code of ethics is quite different than your code of ethics and my code of ethics. My code of ethics is the Word of God, the Bible. My Savior is Jesus Christ. And everything that I do in life revolves around obedience to the Word of God, if at all possible. And I have to overcome the flesh, as everyone else does, in order to do that. But the elite have a code of ethics also. Their code of ethics, one of the facets of their code of ethics is they must tell you everything they're going to do before they do it. You heard me correctly. They will tell you through a Hollywood movie. They will tell you through buzzwords. They will tell you through expressions that you may hear on the national media. But if you know how to tune your ear to listen to what the elite are saying, you will know everything that's going to take place tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, if you know how to listen to what they're telling you. Many of you remember years ago, George Herbert Bush. Remember, he had been the head of the CIA, and then he was sitting as ambassador to China, and then he came back to America and was vice president under Mr. Reagan, and then he became the President of the United States of America. And he coined an expression later entitled New World Order. Did I understand what he was saying back then? No. I do today. You do too. Because it is influencing your life. Did he know what he was saying? Did his elitist friends know what he was telling them? You better believe it. They knew 10 years and 20 years down the line. He used to use another expression entitled 1,000 points of light. Did that mean anything to you? Didn't to me. Does it today? You better believe it. The elite must tell you what they're going to do before they do it. Now, let me give you an everyday one that maybe you've thought of and maybe you've never thought about. Social Security. Did you catch it? They did. In fact, when the Social Security system was put in by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, did he know what he was doing? He was the first socialist president of the United States of America. Did he know what Social Security was? Come on now, what is socialism? Socialism is the exact opposite of freedom. Socialism is your formation of a socialistic, communistic system. Is America a socialistic country? No. We are a constitutional republic, and we, the people, tell the government what to do. The government doesn't tell us what to do. We are supposed to be telling the government what to do. Now, what word did they use there? They were telling you, and they were telling me, many, many years ago, where they were headed. Did anybody pick up on it? Oh, We fell for it, didn't we? Well, you might have. I didn't. No, I won't be their slave. You see, I learned something out there in those seminars in the Bahamas. Their young elitists in training are taught to make slaves out of you and me. And they know what they're doing. It is not done by chance. It's done by design. And everything that's happening today is being done by their hand-trained elitists who went to seminars such as I was allowed to go to. Oh, sure. You should have seen those places where we were. Beautiful private beaches where they could play with their girlfriends. The most marvelous foods you could imagine just caught out of the ocean. Everything was upbeat, rich. They trained them well as to what lifestyle they should live and how they should live that lifestyle while you and the taxpayers paid for it. They knew exactly what they were doing. I didn't fall for their line when I heard Social Security. I'm going to admit to you, I am 76 years of age now. I have never accepted a Social Security check. I have never gotten a penny from the federal government that I didn't send them the check back. You heard me correctly. I have gotten some checks from the government. I sent them every one back, signed with a note saying, keep your dirty, filthy paper. I'm free. I'm we the people. I'll tell you what to do. You're not going to socialize me. I've never accepted a penny from Social Security. I've never accepted a penny from Medicare or Medicaid. I'll take care, the Lord will take care of me, and He'll take care of you too. And if you will, folks, you must not allow yourself to be enslaved by the elite. They have been taught the methods of enslavement. I know. I sat and listened to them train their young elitist. I want to give you another expression. Social studies. Oh, your children brought home their social studies book from the classroom, didn't they? Did you catch it? Now, I'm training you in the buzzwords of the elite right now. I hope you understand what I'm doing. I'm trying to help you think. Social studies. What was it years ago when I was a boy and I was in school? What did they call it? They called it history. What is it today? It's social studies. Did you get it? The elite were telling you something. Did it register? They want you to be one world. No more United States of America, no more Constitution, no more Republic. You can't be independent anymore. You've got to fall into line with the New World Order and the United Nations. And don't you dare try to be we the people anymore. We're going to make you we the sheeple. I have a word for them. I have no intentions in being a sheep in the hands of the elite. I learned their thought patterns and their ways early in life. And when they put in social studies in school, I said, oh, people, I hope you understand what they've done to you. And they told you what they were doing. Did you get it? They changed the word from history to social studies, socialism. The elite wrote the textbooks, and they're training your children in the public schools. I homeschooled my children. I taught them the difference between socialism and social studies and true history. Are you getting the words? Are you understanding what they're doing to you? The first communist president of the United States of America was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Social security, social programs of every type. The elite are taking away your constitutional republic. And in its place, they've given you a democracy. You ask any politician today, what form of government is the United States of America? What does he say? A democracy. I asked one the other day, or I should say a while back in a public meeting where I was, and right here, right from our state, and I said, what form of government do we have? And he said, a democracy. No, you don't have a democracy in the United States of America. You find anywhere in the Constitution of the United States of America that ever says we're a democracy. Read Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, and you'll find out that it says the federal government must guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. They have taken away your republic. They've given you a democracy, and it was done beginning many, many years ago. The elite have taken away your currency. I hope you realize what they've done to you. You don't have a quarter anymore. You have a phony piece of metal. What was a quarter? It was 1/4 of a dollar. What was a dollar? 1 ounce of silver. What have they given you today? A funny piece of phony metal that you look around the outside and you see a circle. Didn't you get the message when they put that piece of phony stuff out there? Did it not register with you that they had taken away your silver from your quarter, from your half dollar, and then you couldn't go to the bank and get the silver dollar anymore? Why? They had to take away the value, and they had to give you a piece of paper in exchange. A piece of paper? What good's that paper? It doesn't even have redeemable anymore by silver and gold. Now it's no more than a Federal Reserve note. And what is the Federal Reserve? It's not even an agency of the government of the United States of America. It is a private corporation that has literally taken over our currency in this country. The elite have taken away your God. Yes, you heard me correctly. They had to. You've heard me tell this before on radio shows and in other DVD presentations I've made, but they have a plan to remove the God who made America great. And the only way that they could bring in their new world order was to remove the God that had made America great from our society. They took the 10 Commandments off of the courthouse steps. They removed the Bible from the classroom. They had to remove righteousness and God from our society before they could bring in their new world order. So, you would say, well, wait a minute now, Chaplain, you say that the elite are trained to make us slaves? We're not slaves, you say. Oh, yes, you are. You're already a slave, and you don't know it. Let me prove it to you. 48% of all Americans receive some form of money from the United States government every month. You say you're not a slave? The people in Greece thought they weren't a slave either. But you see what's happening over there. You say, well, wait a minute. What are you talking about? You're a farmer? They give you a farm subsidy. What is it? It's a form of enslavement. It's a way of bribery. It's a method of the elite doing what they want to do with you. Food stamps? Oh, but you, wait a minute. I deserve those. No, you don't. It is a method of enslavement. You say, well, welfare, Social Security, or maybe you get a paycheck because you work for the government, federal or state. Medicare, Medicaid, 48% of all people in the United States of America receive some sort of check or payment from the United States government on any given month. Now we come around to voting in November. How are you going to vote? I've got to vote for the president that's going to make sure I get my food stamps and my welfare and my Social Security. And whoever says I'm going to get my handout from the government, you say you want a slave? You see, all of this was taught. The younger elite are taught one thing: how to enslave you. Now, I'm going to coin a word here. The name of the game is control. I want to take the word control and deal with it for a moment, if I may. One of the things that I remember learning in those seminars that I attended out in the Bahamas, and one thing that I learned from the elite when I lived with them, is control everything, own nothing. Now, let me try, if I can, to explain somewhat. And then I'll come down to the punchline. And then you'll say, oh my goodness, all of a sudden a light turned on, and I'm beginning to see it. The elite are told and taught that they shouldn't even own the coat on their back, but control it. Now, catch my words, please, very carefully. In those seminars, the young elite were taught not to own their house, but to live in it. And I know all of this is going to, so much of it's going to be brand new to you. I remember one day I was with a certain attorney friend of mine. He was close enough friend that I could be very personal with him. And he wasn't charging me by the minute or by the hour. We were just chatting. And I mentioned some of the things that I had learned in those seminars out in the Bahamas. And I said, do you do these things? Do you use this? Do you use this? And I'll name them in a moment. And I named some of these things. And he sat there and he wouldn't answer me. And I said, does your Congress friend know about this? And he wouldn't answer me. I even asked a judge one time about some of these things, and he wouldn't answer me. So this attorney friend, finally, when I got through going over a number of things and asking questions and he refused to answer, he looked square at me, and I'll never forget, it was kind of a puzzled look on his face, and he said, Chaplain, how do you know all this? And I told him where I learned it, when I lived with the elite. And then I said, okay, now, be honest with me. Do you know about these things? Yeah. I said, do you use these things? Yeah. I said, do you own your airplane? No. Do you fly in it? Yeah. Do you own your house? No. Will your children pay any inheritance tax when you die? No. Folks, you must understand how the elite think. They have been taught to think in terms of the laws that they have written for the enslavement of you. The laws are made for the elite. What Congress passes is for their benefit. Their attorneys write the laws. The congressmen never read them. And if some of the congressmen don't want to pass the bills vote for the bills because they're afraid that their constituents, will find out about it, the elite have a way, which I'll tell you about in a moment or two, of stepping in and getting them to vote for that bill. Let me go back again to the word control. The elite, the younger elite, are taught, and I heard them explain it in detail in these seminars, and I heard it from the elite themselves when I lived with them. They're taught never to own the coat on their back. Never own their house, never own their automobile, never own their penthouse where their business is. Never own their yacht. and never owned their jet aircraft. And this one, I almost hesitate, but I have to give it. I've waited 35 years to never have any income. Did you hear that? They fly in that jet, but they don't own it. They drive that automobile, but it's owned in a trust, or their company supplies it to them. So when it comes down to the end, here it is. You've heard it. You've heard it all over the news lately. Tax the rich. Wall Street protest. I look at what's happening in the country and I say, if only you knew what I know. If you had the slightest idea what the elite, well, here it goes. The elite are not the slightest worried about a bill being passed to tax the rich. They're sitting back laughing at you. Why? They don't have anything to be taxed. Oh, you say, I never thought about that. They don't own that jet. They don't own that automobile. They don't own that penthouse. They just put that coat on every morning. They don't own it. They are taught to control everything and own nothing. And they're taught how to do it. I know. I attended their seminars. I heard what they were teaching the younger elite. They know what they're doing. They know the control factors. What do they use? I'll just name a few of them for you. I named them off to that attorney that day. And he wouldn't admit it, wouldn't say a thing. The elite are taught how to use trust, how to use contractual companies, how to use blind trust, how to use family trust. They're taught how to use all of the loopholes that are out there for their use. They know the intricate sides of this, but yet you will go to a 9-to-5 job every day and wonder why you can't make it. But the elite sit there and they've passed all the laws that they need to be able to live their lifestyle. While you wonder how you're going to make it, since the Federal Reserve note is losing much of its purchasing power. The elite are not worried about their children inheriting their fortune. Why? They don't own their fortune. And you wonder, oh, how will I ever leave my child an inheritance? It's amazing the elite have none of those problems. They saw to it that it was all done, and they taught their young people how to do it. They control everything. And that's what they want with you. The name of the game is control. Now, I'm going to meddle for a while. Congress is controlled by the elite. One of the individuals that I asked to appear with me on this DVD series, the reason I asked him is because you have got to know about inside trading. I learned it years ago when I went to those seminars. Illustration. A person is elected to Congress for the first time. They arrive in Washington. They're a Tea Party member. They're all excited. They're going to change the world. They hardly get there good, and they are taught the secrets of the elite. And one of those secrets is inside trading. But it's a trap. And I'd like to explain why. I chose a person to deal with the subject of inside trading in this seminar. It may be difficult for you. You may have to listen to it 2 or 3 times. You may have to go back and replay that section of the DVD 3 and 4 times. But you've got to get it, people, if you don't want to be a slave to the elite. And if you want to warn your Congress people that you're sending off to Washington, your Tea Party members and others, if you want to let them know, give them this DVD and tell them what they're going to face when they get there. They'll come home and admit to you that that's the first thing that happened. One of their senior congressional members will come around and say, have you heard about inside trading? Now, next week, just say for instance, next week there's going to be a bill passed, and it'll be for a certain company. And if you'll go and buy that company's stocks right now, we're going to see to it that this bill is passed so that this solar panel company will have millions and millions of dollars that they can begin to work with. And their stock is going to go right through the roof in the next 6 months because we've made available to them all these millions of dollars. Now, if you will go and buy that stock right now, before the bill passes, you can make $1 million. And we'll tell you how to put that $1 million in the Cayman Islands so that you don't have to show it to your constituents when you go home. You say, yeah, okay. So you fall for the line. Everybody does. You're human. There's no way you're going to keep on turning it down after it's offered to you day after day after day after day. Okay, and all of a sudden you realize, well, I did. I bought an honest stock. Yeah, you didn't do anything wrong. And you kept it for 6 months and you sold it. That's perfectly honest. You can sell a stock. And now I have been shown how to put that in the Cayman Islands or the Turks and the Caicos. I hope you're getting some words here, folks. You might not have heard of the Turks Islands before and the Caicos Islands. Maybe you don't know much about the Caymans. And so you put it there. And you say, this will pay for my child's education in style at Harvard or Yale. I'm justified in doing it. Now, next month, there is a bill that's going to be passed that the elite want, like they wanted the health care bill. All your constituents were against it, Nellie. Americans flooded Washington saying, don't you vote for that bill. And your senior congressman comes around and says, do you remember how I suggested to you that you should buy that stock and sell that stock? And, you know, we've helped you out, and we've tried to make life a little easier for you and your family. Don't you think, even though your constituents are against it, that you better vote for this bill? Now, after you've been in Washington for 2 or 3 terms, you have made so many millions, and you've fallen for their line so many times, you don't have any choice. Have you wondered why the Patriot Act got passed? Just turn that on. You remember when we made you $1 million, made you $2 million, made you $5 million? You remember you came in here a middle-class American, Tea Party member, or Democrat, or Republican, and you know, you're getting along pretty good now. we need your vote on the Patriot bill, even though you know it's going to enslave the American people, or the health care bill. You getting it? New congressional arrivals. They're taught this. I talked to one here some years ago that happened to be in one of my meetings. And he heard me say these things, and he said, "Chaplain, you're exactly right. We'd hardly gotten to Congress good, and we heard about them talking about all of these things." Now, I'll never forget it. A number of years ago, I was on the phone with one of my elitist friends. I can name him. He's gone on to eternity now. He died about a year ago. His name is Mr. Ken Fromm. Many of you wondered for years if I really had friends in high circles, and then finally I was able to give you some names. I remember one day, by the way, just stayed in passing, Mr. Fromm, whom I knew back at Prudhoe Bay years ago, when he passed away, he knew Christ as his Savior. I'll never forget talking with his son on the phone just before he died. And I'd had a number of conversations with the family members, and his son said to me, "Chaplain, you don't have a thing to worry about. You'll see Dad in heaven." He said, "There's no question but that he knows Christ is his Savior." So take heart in knowing that some of the elite are going to see you up there, if you're going to be there also. I remember I was on the phone with him one day, and you'll forgive me. I was on the phone with him one day, and we were talking about general things, and I said, "I understand that there's something about health care in America. It's going to come before Congress before long." And he said, "Yes, Chaplain, a health care bill." And I said, now, there are some of the elite who know everything that goes on behind closed doors. They know everything that's going to happen a month and a year from now. And he already knew about this. And he said to me, he said, "Chaplain, that is not a health care bill." And I said, "What?" I said, "This is labeled to the Americans as health care." He said, "Chaplain, what you're going to see present before Congress shortly." He knew about it. They wrote it. The elite of the world wrote this bill. The president never read it before he signed it. Not a single congressman read the 3,000 pages of the health care bill before they signed it. Not one. But I know somebody who did. The elite had read it from cover to cover. They knew everything that was in it. Their attorneys had worded it precisely as they wanted it, and they presented it before Congress, and they had to work hard to get votes by reminding congressmen, "Oh, you remember when we helped you make 500,000 or $1 million? And we told you how to do something with it? Then you better vote our way." And so I said, "Okay, if this is not a health care bill, what is it?" He said, "Chaplain, this is total control of the American people." These are the exact words. He said, "Chaplain, this is total control of the American people." The health care bill is not a health care bill. The health care bill is the ultimate of control of the American population. The Patriot Act, it's the same way. The Patriot Act and the health care bill put together brought about the ability for the elite to bring in the new world order. Well, let me go abroad, if I may. The elite control Greece. I was with a financial advisor recently, and I said, why would anybody in their right mind buy any Greek paper, Greek bonds? And he said to me, Chaplain, you don't understand. He said, that's what it's all about. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the elite are buying the Greek paper that's worthless, and they're buying it with worthless paper. And I said, why do they want them? He said, Chaplain, that's what I mean. You see, when the elite finally are ready to do what they're going to do in the world and letting the financial system collapse, he said they want every nation on the face of the earth. They want every state in America. They want every country in the world. They want every city in America. They want every county in America to be so in debt that they can step in and say, you don't have any choice. The elite are creating debt intentionally while they prolong the collapse down the road. And I've been trying my best to tell people this. The elite are going to let the collapse take place when they want it, but they aren't going to let it take place. And he said, whenever the elite finally decide to allow the financial collapse to take place, they can step in, for instance, to Greece and say, Greece, you don't have any choice. Your paper's worthless. We own you. Do you see why the elite are buying the bonds? They'll own the country. And they say, you must accept our new currency. You'll have to take our new world order. Now, that's not only true of Greece. The elite control America. Why do you think that there seems to be no restraints on the national debt? Another $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion, on and on we go. Why don't they care? Does it not matter that we're up into the trillions and trillions? No, it doesn't matter one bit, and every person in Congress knows it'll never be paid back. The elite want that debt to grow to the trillions and the multi-trillions and the mega-trillions, and when they finally get to the place they're ready to allow the collapse, and they could, with derivatives, they could bring about that collapse tomorrow morning, or maybe even tonight. And all they'd have to do is pull the plug on the derivative market. And that's the reason I chose someone to give the subject of derivatives in this presentation, because you've got to know what they are. You probably never even heard the word. I didn't even have a good definition up until a few months ago. Whenever the elite are ready for the plug to be pulled, they can step in and say, never mind your Constitution. Your dollar is already dead. You've got to accept our new world order. You don't have any choice. Your children are crying. They're hungry. We have the answer. They control the Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt, Mubarak, they took him out so they could put the Muslim Brotherhood in. And they're the ones that control the Muslim Brotherhood and support them. Gaddafi in Libya. Now, Mubarak and Gaddafi both were our allies, and they kept things stable in the Middle East. What do we have today? A Muslim Brotherhood controlled by the elite. They control America through the executive orders. They control churches through 501c3 organizational status. Mr. Rothschild once was quoted as saying, "Allow me to control the currency of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." Through the Federal Reserve, they control our currency. The currency of the elite. I must give this before I close. I was on the phone with one of my elite friends one day, and I became exasperated. I must admit to you, I was at my wit's end. He told me about this bill before Congress, and that bill before Congress, and this thing. and that thing that was going to happen. I think he was telling me out of respect for the fact that I'd given 3 years of my life to be their chaplain, and he was trying to help me make preparation for my own family and my own welfare. In fact, he had even advised some things. I won't go into that. And I said, okay, what can I do? He said, Chaplain, do you know what our currency is? And I said, no, I don't. He said, our currency is gold and silver. And he said, there's only one thing that you can do in order to maintain your purchasing power. He said, the dollar is gone. He said, the day that the Federal Reserve begins to buy its own paper, the dollar's done with. He said, the only way you're going to maintain purchasing power is our currency. And I said, your currency is gold and silver? Yes. Less than 2% of Americans own gold coins. Less than 1% of Americans own gold coins minted by the United States Mint. Less than 0.5% of Americans own 1-ounce gold coins minted prior to 1933. Oh, folks, this is so important. Please, you must catch this. If you are going to purchase the currency of the elite, you need to purchase gold coins minted by the United States Mint. Don't buy foreign coins. They are not legal tender in the United States of America. You are going to need American coins minted by the United States Mint, and please buy coins minted prior to 1933. Why? By law, coins minted by the United States Mint prior to 1933 and silver coins with any date on them, whether it be past or present, cannot be confiscated by the United States government if they ever decide to confiscate gold again, as they did many years ago. Did you know that? Buy gold coins minted prior to 1933 and nothing but coins minted by the United States Mint that are legal tender, and 4 states in the United States of America have already passed laws saying that the grocery store, the hardware store, and the drugstore must accept gold coins and silver coins minted by the United States Mint as legal tender for payment of debt. 4 states have already passed that. Now, they haven't found out how to do it yet. They haven't found a way to implement it. They will. All the refined, now please, think of this mentally. All of the refined gold in the world could be put into a cube 60 feet by 60 feet by 60 feet. Why does it have value that paper doesn't have? If it is written on a piece of paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. One of my elitist friends said that to me one day, and I pass it on to you as some of the best advice I can give. Gold in the year 2000 was $273.60. By 2005, gold was worth, a 1-ounce gold coin was worth $518.90. By 2009, that same gold coin was worth $1,096.50. By the end of 2011, that same gold coin was worth $1,566.80. There will be food on the grocery store shelves. I know this disagrees somewhat with some of my survivalist friends. There will, please, I'm trying my best, people, to help you understand what the elite have said. There will be plenty of food on the grocery store shelves, plenty of food and water. The shelves aren't going to be empty. As one of them said to me, Chaplain, if the crop fails in Florida, we just bring it in from another country. If we have a crop failure in California, we can bring it in from our New World Order friends somewhere else. There is not going to be a shortage of food and water on the grocery store shelves, but you may go hungry. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Yes, it does. Why? Because your currency is going to devalue to the point, with the trillions of dollars of national debt we have, your currency is going to devalue to the point that you take a wheelbarrow load of Federal Reserve notes to the grocery store to buy a loaf of bread. The grocery stores will have the bread, and the grocery store shelves will be full, but you may go hungry and your children may cry for lack of food because your currency, it has already been planned to devalue it to that point. The name of the game is control. You've got to learn their mindset. Think like the elite, and you can overcome the New World Order. Please call the professionals that you'll see on this DVD. They know the issues. That's the reason I've asked them to be on this DVD series. They don't think like the average professional out there. I was in California a number of years ago. Spoke to a group of people, I think there was a few hundred there. It was a caucus for the Republican Party. And after the meeting, a very well-dressed, attractive, middle-aged lady walked up to me and said, Chaplain, I'd like to speak with you after most of the crowd has moved out and you have a few minutes. I said, I'd be glad to. After I noticed most everyone had moved out of the building, I went back and sat down in the auditorium. And this lady said, Chaplain, I'm Mrs. So-and-so. I'll not mention her name. You'll know who she is. And she said, I am the chairman of the Republican Party of California who introduced Ronald Reagan to the Republican Party, whereby he became president of the United States of America. I said, congratulations. We have not had a single president of the United States of America since Ronald Reagan that has not been an elitist. Did you hear me? Ronald Reagan was not one. Oh no, now just wait till you hear the story. The lady said, Chaplain, I was at the hotel that night when Ronald Reagan was to choose his vice presidential running candidate. She said, I was there with them. And she said, Ronald Reagan came to us personally, his close friends, and said, I promise you, I will not choose an elitist as my vice presidential running candidate. And he said, I know that George Herbert Bush is one, and I know Mr. Kissinger is one, and he said, I promise you, I will not choose them as my vice presidential running candidate. He chose Bush. He came to this lady the next day who was the one that introduced him to the Republican Party. And he said, I'm going to have to apologize. He said, I'm very sorry. He said, Bush was there, Kissinger was there. He named a few other people in the room, and I was there. And he said, I was told that either I chose Mr. Bush as my vice presidential running candidate, or they would smear me with the media all over this nation and guaranteed me I would never become the president of the United States of America. And he said, I had to make a choice, either to accept Mr. Bush, whom I knew is an elitist, or to become the president and try to help America. I had a choice, and I had no choice. And he said, I knew they could do it. And he said, I chose Mr. Bush so that I could help America for 8 years. I was watching the morning news a while back. I very seldom ever watch the morning news. And who do you think I saw? Now, this happened personally. And who was being interviewed? Daddy Bush. And finally they came to the end of the interview, and the person said, Mr. Bush, I need to ask you one last question. Do you ever watch the morning news? Mr. Bush spoke up and said, no. You know how you can do it. He's a very curt person anyway. He said, no, I never watch the morning news. Well, the newscaster was really taken back a step. She had to hesitate for a moment, and finally she said, well, Mr. Bush, why don't you watch the morning news? And he said, because I already know what it's going to be. Please, folks, view all 3 of these DVDs. The third one is the most important. Give them to every friend you've got. And God bless you. Thank you for allowing me to be on this DVD in your home, or wherever you may be viewing it. I wish you the best in overcoming the New World Order.